All right. Hello and welcome. Today's talk, we are going to be talking about creating your podcast and more specifically within that, how to do that on YouTube in a super simple, way easier than you would probably think way so that you can get started. Because one of the big things that I hear a lot is it's kind of one of these chicken or the egg, which one came first kind of scenarios. It's like, I need to start talking and doing these things, and then I can figure out my YouTube channel and my podcast, and I can figure this out, but I need to just start working on it. But if you take the traditional path of creating a podcast, which you're going to see a ton of trainings and all this stuff and courses you can buy, if you go around that path first, you need to have an official title and you need to have this tagline and you need to do all these like hurdles and hoops that you have to jump through before you can actually get it started. And it stalls so many amazing, beautiful, big ideas that are out there. So I want to provide a way for you today that you can get started. You can take this path to take imperfect action and refine so that you will have this beautiful podcast in the end. So, hi, if we haven't met yet, I'm Izzy Nally. I do have an MBA as well as tons of business experience being a business owner myself. So, that small business aspect, as well as working in corporate. Within that field, I work within marketing, helping you get visible utilizing my Get Visible method and ultimately helping you step up as the leader that I know you are meant to be and to rise into that position fully. And as we step into that, all of us, even me, it's always a work. I call it in one of my manifestation courses that I wrote, I call it energetic hygiene, where we really need to keep at it. It is a practice. So, as I'm inviting you to step up, own your voice, right? Like hopefully that's one of the things that you're considering as you start your podcast is owning your voice so that you can have conversations that people need to hear. Is that you? Is that you? So I want to hear, why is it that you want to create a podcast? Why are you considering it? Why are you tuning into this? What is this thing, this idea that you have? So go ahead. If you're watching replay, you can do that hashtag replay. If you're watching it live, do the hashtag live. And I really invite you to participate in this. It will help you be more engaged as we go through. Today, I'm going to be upfront and honest. I am not selling you anything. So there's no catch. There's no catch to this today. This is literally, I want you to be able to have a platform and to see the ease that you can make this happen. I also want to help you bust some myths about creating a podcast. And I really want to provide some reality on what it really takes to get visible. Because if you know me, I don't sugarcoat anything. Once we get into teaching, I don't sugarcoat it. I tell you the real truth. And I am always going to be extremely honest with you. So if you are all about honesty as well, you love the truth, then put in an H for honesty in the chat. I love meeting and connecting with fellow people that goes, I don't want to sugarcoat anything. I just want to get down to the nitty gritty. All right. Welcome today. We're talking about creating your podcast, but more specifically, creating it with YouTube. So I am going to share my screen in just a little bit. And I am going to show you how to do this on YouTube. And you're going to be like, really? That's it? That's all I have to do? Yes. Like it is so easy. So let's look at podcasting in general. So a lot of times for podcasting, we are so used to pulling up a podcast on iTunes or some type of podcast platform. And it looks so well organized and crisp and clear. And if you're going to do it that route first, yes, I will tell you, and I'm not selling mine because I don't have one. But I do really recommend that you take a course by someone who is podcasting and podcasting really, really well, to enroll in their course, because there is a lot of stuff that you would have to do to get that side of it straight and to learn how to do all of this editing and things like that. But that's not what we're talking about today. Because the truth is, you need to start talking. You need to start doing interviews. You need to start doing things now, recording them ahead of time before you get to that level. And a lot of times people think that's the only way to do it. It's not the only way. Okay, it is not the only way. If you're hearing this, it's not the only way. Put an N in the chat. It's not the only way. There is more than one way. And so if you have a calling, if you have a desire, allow yourself to release the boxes, the contraction feeling that's like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to do this? Release all of that. And ask yourself again, and I really want to hear this from you, like, what is the message, or what are the conversations? What is the topic that you really want to have conversations on and put out there? Now, when you are doing this and you have a podcast, there's two different ways you can do it. You can talk by yourself and you're just talking. You can interview people and it's this conversation. It can also be a hybrid, which is where it's a lot more editing, where you combine the two of those. But those are really the two things that you would do. In order to create a podcast, there needs to be a theme. So this is regardless, whatever way you're going about it, there needs to be a theme. And this can be an overarching theme. It does not have to be so narrowed and niched down. But the best way to think about this is, if someone listens to your podcast, and just imagining, let some vision come in. If someone is watching your podcast and they are so inspired and they want to tell a friend or recommend it to someone, who are they going to recommend it to? And what are they going to say? Like, oh my gosh, you totally have to listen to this podcast. This person talks about these things and she does it in a really unique way, or she adds this flair. Like, let's start there. Because if you are struggling to hold a vision, a large scale vision of the impact that you want to make with this podcast, the rest of it is going to be a struggle. So we need to have this first and foremost. And this is why I highly recommend starting with a YouTube podcast, because whatever this vision is right now, you are going to continue to get clearer and clearer and clearer about it as you get into it and you start talking about it, and then you start telling people about your podcast. And what I would recommend, my expert opinion, especially when we're talking about getting visible, is to interview people. Because when we can put ourselves out there in a way that is helping us and helping others, meaning the people that you're interviewing, and you come on and you have these amazing conversations, you are going to start to realize who you like to interview, what you like to talk about, because you are, and I've had these where I've done the interview and it didn't go anything like I planned. The conversation went somewhere else, and I learned so much from those. But would I have learned that if I didn't put myself out there and start going for it? So the reason I'm saying today is starting a YouTube podcast is because once you actually like create a more formalized podcast where it's going into an RSS feed, it's going onto the iTunes, it's going onto all these like podcast apps, and it's like just being thrown out there. First and foremost, that's probably going to cost you at least $15 a month for your RSS feed if you're paying for that. But second, when people start listening to those first few, and that's what you're really putting out there, you really want these to be awesome ones. And not every interview you do is going to be awesome. I have had the interview where the interviewee kind of took over and I couldn't even get a word in edgewise. So I've had that happen. I've had where we started doing it and it just kind of like meandered, and the guests started kind of getting choked up and like they didn't really know what to say next. Like they kind of froze. And when you do these, I always recommend, and I'm going to recap this for you too. I always recommend that you have a pre-meeting with these people. So I'm going to give you some really great tips here in a moment. But I want you to understand the difference of the podcast on YouTube versus a podcast on an RSS feed, and how doing this first is so essential to get you started, to get you visible, to do all of those things. So first and foremost, write this down. Number one, and as soon as you do this, put a number one in the chat. One is you have to have a big vision. You have to have a big vision. So that big vision is going to include, who do you see listening to your podcast? And I really want you to get into that. And if you need to close your eyes for a moment and just, okay, these are the people that are going to be listening to my podcast and they're going to be feeling amazing. Because when you're speaking in your podcast, you really need to speak as if you're speaking to that person, so you can have a sample person in your mind. Maybe you have a group of people in mind that you're speaking to them. And so that allows you to ask the questions that you know they would want to hear, to highlight the things that you know that they would want to hear. Okay, so we have to have this vision. So one is the vision. And within that, they are then going to recommend it to someone. So number two is, what is someone going to say, or how are they going to say it when they recommend your podcast? Why are they going to say someone else needs to listen to it? So after you have that big vision, and it's part of your big vision, yes, balloons come up when I do choose a lot. So when you have this big vision, number two is going to be, how is someone going to recommend it? How is someone else going to describe it? And so that means that it needs to be something easy, crisp, clear, simple that someone can recommend, that they can remember. And that is totally fine. When you're writing it out, let your brain explode all over your piece of paper. And then highlight the key words that are coming through, and then keep narrowing it down to make it simple and simple and simple. Okay, so that's number two. Number three of recommendations I'm going to make is, you're going to put it out there that you want to interview people for your podcast. But if you just say you put it in a big Facebook group, there's some Facebook groups that have like 23,000 people that are like coaches and things like that. And I'm going to put it out in the Facebook group and I'm going to say, I need guest speakers for my podcast. And if you just say that, you are going to have a flood of comments. And you know what the number one thing people are going to say? Interested. That's all they're going to say. And you're going to have to cipher through and say, great, what would you like to speak about? So this is, again, reemphasizing why you need to be clear about who it's for. And you don't have to have all the details about what all you're talking about. If you know who it's for and what the overall goal is and why they would want to listen, so that when you put out this request, and again, you're going to do a few, I would recommend only interview like 3 people. So reach out to people you already know potentially. If you don't know anybody, then you're going to need to do this step anyways. And let that be a foundation, because when you put this post out into a group requesting for guest speakers, you're going to need to say, looking for guest speakers for my podcast about X. And when you do that, you're putting yourself in an open state where you might have people comment and go, hey, I can speak about this. I really think it'll help your audience because, and it might be something you hadn't thought of. So this is why we really need to have this bigger vision. You don't need to start super specific. And it's really key that your audience is listening because why? Because they're trying to grow their business, because they're really big into spiritual development, because they are healing from a divorce, because they're a mom, like whatever it might be, because they're trying to manifest, because they're trying to get out of debt. Keep it broad yet specific, narrowed down. Okay. So if I posted, hey, I'm looking for guest speakers for my podcast about growth mindset, manifestation, and abundance for entrepreneurs. That's specific, but we could talk about so much, right? So we could talk about so much. Now, for me, I actually have on YouTube specifically, let me give you an example. On YouTube specifically, I have my Magnified Abundance, which is my actual podcast. And then I have a sub podcast that is Decoding Wisdom. And we do specifically looking at quotes. Now, some of the Decoding Wisdom I will put onto Magnified Abundance, but not all of them, because they can come over to YouTube and watch all of the Decoding Wisdom. So you can play around with it and you can get creative. That has happened for me over an evolved state of time. You may find that you do the exact opposite. You might start with something like looking at quotes, like for me, and talking about the quote. And maybe that's where you start, and you start on YouTube. And then you're like, you know what? I keep seeing this common theme that I keep talking about. I want to create my larger podcast to be about this, and this is where I'm going to interview people on these things. So allow yourself to be open, because, and I'm saying that because I see so many people, they go into this and they think, oh, it needs to be perfect, and I need to do it this way, and I'm not really sure what to do, and I don't know if this is worthwhile, and they start getting overcritical. But if inspiration and desire has hit you, then you need to go after that. Just start. Take imperfect action. Let it flow. Let it go. Okay. Interviewing, again, is what I'm going to recommend. Number 3, I'm going to recommend interviewing as a really great place to start. Now, let me come back to that and why that helps you get visible. I started going off on a tangent of like how to post so that you can get people to interview. Interviewing is really fantastic because they are going to pull out of you conversation that you might not have thought about, all this knowledge that you have that you might not thought about until that conversation happened. It's going to help you expand, and it's going to clear about what it is that you do love talking about. So there's that part. It is also really great because those people are going to want to share this interview, and they are going to help promote your podcast. Now, the lovely part about YouTube, and in no way I'm saying this is not an option on the other platforms because it is becoming more and more of an option, but YouTube, you can take on this component of this visual interview as well. And so you can have this visual. You also will need to learn in the process to be descriptive. When people are listening and they're not able to see, you're going to have to describe these things. And when you're doing it on video, if you forget, if you mess up, it's okay. The video is there. The next part that I really want to say is really important. Did you know that YouTube is the biggest search engine, more so than just typing it into Google? That's huge, right? That's huge. So your titles and keywords and descriptions that you are putting into your video, your recording, or your podcast is going to show up and allow people to find you, to subscribe to you, to binge watch on you, and to really utilize you as a resource within whatever it is that they're wanting to consume. That being said, this leads to the next tip. Okay, so you might want to write that down. More people are going to find you on YouTube than they are going to be on Google, just a Google engine search. This next tip is how to make sure that people actually watch the whole video and keep returning. If your interviews and all of your episodes are really long, like a full hour, 45 minutes, something like that, it might not be consumable by everyone. And it's really hard. I know in my experience, at least, like when I go to listen to someone's podcast and it just keeps going on and on and on, especially if it's like a monologue style like this, where they're just talking, it can become a little difficult to finish the whole thing if it's like 45 minutes to an hour. Those 45 minutes to an hour, and I know this from instructional design, learning and development within the corporate world, creating trainings and all of these things, as well as working within the media world here within social media and marketing. The average time for someone to watch a video is 5 minutes. 5 minutes is that sweet spot. Now, I'm not saying for your podcast to make your podcast 5 minutes. That probably wouldn't work. But if someone is going to listen to your podcast to say, oh, I'm going to listen to it while I'm in the carpool line picking my kids up from school, they probably have 15, 20 minutes. If you are going 45 minutes to an hour, people are going to need a visual component to be able to track what you're saying. So they are going to probably want presentations and slides and stuff like that. So you can always invite them from a 15, 20-minute talk to a webinar where you can do those things. So considering the time and length of your episodes. Now, if someone is having a conversation, right? Like we can listen into conversations for a lot longer because there's a this and there's a that. And you're listening to the different voices and it's keeping you more entertained and it's like tuning in. I was that kid at the restaurants. I'm like listening to the people behind me. At the mall, I'm like sitting there and listening to the people's conversation over to the side. And like we love tuning into conversations. Those can be longer. Okay, so your next tip is if it's a monologue, meaning it's only you, you're only talking, keep it short, keep it sweet, 15, 20 minutes. That will provide you content as well for those short bits. If you are doing interviews, those can be longer. But in all reality, podcast success really says, like, please don't make it more than 45 minutes. Most people won't continue to listen or they'll have to keep pausing and then they might not finish it. And if they don't finish that one, they feel less successful. So they might not come back to listen to the next one. All right. Again, I told you I'm gonna take you over to YouTube in just a moment, and I'm gonna show you how incredibly simple this is. I am also gonna show you StreamYard, and StreamYard makes this so incredibly easy. So does anybody use StreamYard? If you're already using StreamYard, you've already played with it, put an S in the chat. If you have not played with StreamYard and you're like, I don't even know how to go live on YouTube, put an in the chat. Like, I need help. Like, I don't even know how to go live on YouTube. Put an in the chat. Because this is important. Before I show you what it looks like, you need to know how to go live. You need to know how to record. Perfect. Okay. I love StreamYard for the fact that right now I am streaming this without having to go and do a bunch of stuff on the back end. This is streaming to YouTube. This is streaming to 3 different Facebook groups. It is also going to save a recording in my file folder. Pretty nice, right? So what I used to do is I would record and go live in a Facebook group, and then I would download that video, and then I would go upload it to YouTube. And it would get really time consuming, and it would prevent me from doing all of that. Like, I just wouldn't do it because it took too many steps. StreamYard is fantastic. It is not the same as Zoom. Okay, it's not. Zoom is more for like group meetings. StreamYard is a broadcasting system. So like right now on my screen, I'm going to see if I can show this to you without it looking super weird. Okay, on my screen, it looks weird. It's kind of like, oh, but I want you to look down here at the bottom where you see here I am. Here's my screen share. And the only reason I can actually see my screen share right now is because I have the same window open. When I click to a different window, it's going to change. And if I have 2 screens, that's even better. I can change how this is displayed on the screen. So you see my little videos down at the bottom. I can put it over to the side. I can make myself bigger. So it's kind of like being a news anchor. And it's like, here we go. And here is, my stuff. And then I can easily take that off of the screen and shift back to me. Now here, let me get back to the bigger screen so you can see. Down at the bottom, so we see the chat over here, and then we see these tools down at the bottom. This is where I can change how my screen is being displayed, and you'll see there's these little people icons. So if I have multiple people on the screen, I can change how we are displayed on the screen as it's being broadcasted. I can see your all's conversations over here in my chat. And I also have the ability, and I'm going to cancel out of this so that you can see this. I also have the ability to add a banner. So like, I'm like, oh, it's Q&A time. I already had this banner pre-made. And I'm just going to click on it. So I have these options. There's also a private chat. So if I'm guest speaking with a couple people, we can have our own little chat going on that no one else is seeing, which is nice. And then there's the comments tab. Go ahead and let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to come back to more questions as well. But I also want to provide this opportunity. Go ahead and start putting your questions in the chat if you have any questions about using StreamYard and how that broadcasts out. One question I know that I'm going to get is, how much is it? How much does it cost? There is a free version to go play. And the free version is great. It just has a little StreamYard icon at the top, and the functionality is very limited. There are different tiers that you can purchase. I think the first tier is like $25 a month. And I think you can stream out to 3 different places. And I could be wrong, so don't quote me. I have the second tier, of paid, which allows me to stream out to 8 places. There are some platforms it doesn't stream to yet, and they are working on getting streamable access to. So it's still kind of wonky when streaming to Instagram. So a lot of time you'll see me with my phone propped up in the corner and I'm streaming to Instagram. And then if you are a Mighty Networks person, it's not streaming yet over there. Other than that, lots of Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Those are my main places that I'm streaming to. Okay. So this banner feature is also really nice. You also have the ability to do some branding, which I'm going to pop up here in a moment. You can, I can add my logo. Boom, there's my logo. I can also add some intros, some music, some things along. There's like all kinds of different stuff. Let's see. Here's one that I used. So you can pop it up. You can make it more branded. These are on the paid version. I have like an intro video that I can play. So it is a broadcasting software. I'll kind of stop there. Now let me get YouTube pulled up for you because this is probably one of the real reasons that you're actually here. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. All right, so hopefully you are seeing YouTube, and I'm going to pop over to Facebook just to make sure that you are seeing this in the right way. Okay, you are. Good. So you will create a YouTube channel. Creating a YouTube channel means that you need to have a Google account, and then it can automatically create you one, or you can actually create a channel where, like, mine is specifically called at Izzy Nally. You can have multiple channels. So this one's kind of like a private one. This one's I made specifically for a course that I created. So you can have multiple channels. So it's like different shows. So like Izzy Nally could be like Izzy Nally the business, Izzy Nally the manifestation, like, and it would be similar to having like a TV station, if we remember those days. And the TV channel would have different shows. So you might have multiple different shows per se. Those can be playlists on your channel, which would be generally about the same thing, right? Like TLC, you kind of know what you're going to expect. Discovery Channel, you know what you're going to expect. History Channel, you know what to expect, right? And then they had the shows, which would be your playlists. Okay. Now I'm going to go to my channel so that I can show you how I do this. So right now I'm live and it's popping up. This is one of the other reasons I love using YouTube for my podcast. There is another tab for any of my lives, and it's over here. Now you're also going to see there is a tab specifically for podcasts. And then, as I mentioned, you can have all your different shows can be on playlists. Podcasts are set up right here. So decoding wisdom for entrepreneurs. I'm going to click here. And here it's going to have all of these, and you can see these are generally me talking. I really try to keep it in that 15 to 20 minute range. You can come back and edit these just the same way that you can other videos. And you can see like my quality is not always fantastic. It's whatever. I'm just doing it. I'm putting myself out there. Imperfect action. That's the goal. Okay. Now I'm going to go back. Where I would edit these is where I uploaded them. So if I uploaded it, I would click create upload video. And then I would come back in and let's say I want to put this one on the podcast. I'm going to click on it. If I click on it, it's going to take me to view it. If I click here and I go edit, No, your videos. Here we go. We're going to edit in your videos. There's the edit button. I'm going to edit this directly, and I can change a lot of the information on here. From playlists. Is it going to make it difficult on me? Oops, something went wrong. Let's try something else. Okay, I'm going to go to playlists. When you create a new playlist, okay, so I went to your videos if it's one that you already have uploaded. If you want to upload one, so you can upload a video, okay? You don't have to go live. You can upload it. You would create new playlist. It's going to ask you, do you want a new playlist or you want a new podcast? You're going to click new podcast. When it goes to new podcast, you're going to get this. What's the title of your podcast? Give me a description of your podcast, and then upload a square picture. Okay? Square picture you're going to do in Canva. If you need me to make you one, I will gladly charge you, but I will make you one. If you're a client of mine, I will make that for free for you. Description. Guess what? You have to start with what you want it to be about. That big vision, then take that, copy that, go over to ChatGPT and say, hey, can you perfect this for me for a podcast? You need to put the initial work in. Don't go over to ChatGPT and say, hey, I want to create a podcast for women who are moms. Give me some ideas. Don't do that. Don't do it. Have your vision, sit with your vision, and then type it all out and ask it to perfect you and maybe give you some suggestions to perfect it. The title, honey, make it whatever you want. You can change it. By doing it over here on YouTube first, you might decide that you want to change it before you really put the work in to do the RSS feed style. Because once you put it out there over there, it's there. Over here, you can change it up. Over there, there's not a lot of changing. There's a lot harder if you can. Okay? It is that simple. This is all you have to do. Once that podcast is created, it will specifically show podcast on this playlist. I recorded this and then I would go over here and I can select multiple. It can be on both magnified abundance and decoding. It is that simple. This one doesn't belong on the podcast. And then I would click save. That is it. Boom, bam. You have a podcast on YouTube that people can tune into. Now, I want to really show you some of these numbers. So when I select and I add it to the podcast, my numbers go up. This is like 15. The numbers will go up when I go live. The numbers will go up depending on what all I edit the video to have in it. And I mean edit in the description. There, yeah, here we go. So 160, 121. So when I do this, go in here. You need to have a description. I like to put the entire description of the podcast. You can edit that. You can come back in. There's a lot of flexibility here. It's attached to my podcast. You can see. You're going to select no, it's not made for kids. The reason this is here is so it shows up on the YouTube Kids app. So it's like a safe video intended specifically for kids. If it's not intended specifically for kids, click no, it's not made for kids. Now, of course, you can put an age restriction if it needs it. No, this is nothing that needs that. Click on show more, and you're going to scroll down to the tags. Tag section. Anything like how to, mindset, quote, business, wisdom, inspiration, motivation, podcast. I could put entrepreneur. I always spell it wrong. You all with me? Abundance, manifest, any keywords. It could be keywords that you've said within the podcast itself. It could be general about. I would recommend to have a general list over to the side in a document of all the tags that you know you're going to use. It will make it easier so that you don't forget. It'll have a bunch of other options. You don't have to worry about that. You'd save it. That's going to help you out. You can create covers for these, and I would recommend at some point you could do that. It's not a necessity. So don't feel like I can't do this until I do that. That's what I really want to caution you against. And like this one here, I'm going to go back and edit it. I'm going to go back and edit the description. I'm going to go back and tag it onto things and add my tags in and stuff like that. Now, again, I'm opening this up to questions because I really want you to have a space where you can ask questions, that you can get answers, that you have a resource, that you have a person. And when I see multiple people asking the same question, what I do and what I recommend as a coach is to protect your time, to establish boundaries. For a paid client, yes, I can have a one-on-one. We can go through all of this. For your group setting, to provide value and feedback so that you all get what you need, I will record another video and answer all of the questions. You still get what you need, and it's put out there so that everyone can see it. Okay? So if you think of something, if you go in and you try this and you have a question, come back into the group. You can also send me a DM. That is also more than welcomed. And what I would recommend so that is this YouTube Studio. This is just, I guess it is YouTube Studio. It is going to my YouTube channel. Yes, YouTube Studio. So I'm pulling that up. And I'm doing this from my desktop, which I recommend to do. I have the app as well on my phone if I need to make a quick edit, like, oh my gosh, I just realized I totally messed that up and I'm out and about. So I can do that on the app too. So I hope that answers your question. So it's in YouTube Studio. This is all like, that YouTube that I was showing you, that's all the free stuff. It's just on going to your channel and setting that up. First and foremost, if you do not have a YouTube channel at all, you need to set one up. There are lots of tutorials on how to do that. Go to YouTube and search how to set up a YouTube channel. Okay. I know that's like sounds so simple, but I talk to so many people and they're like, oh yeah, I didn't think to do that. And there's things I do. I'm like, how to change the batteries in something, and I can't figure it out. I go to YouTube to see if there's a video on it. So setting up your YouTube channel, if you're like, oh my gosh, how much time is that going to take? What all am I going to have to do? Start with blocking an hour off on your calendar to start setting up your YouTube channel. For an hour, work on it. If you find that there are more things that you need to do to continue to set up your channel, or you need more time, before you go on to the next task, find another hour on your schedule within the next few days. The sooner the better. Block it on your calendar and schedule that time to continue working on it. This is not going to get done unless you have some consistency. That being said, I won't go into my huge time management chat, which I could definitely do. I love time management. But if you're like me, I put it on my calendar for every Sunday at X time to work on my podcast and my YouTube channel. And after 2 weeks, that didn't happen. You don't feel guilty about it. You don't say, oh, I'm failing. You go, okay, that time's not working. Why is it not working? Can I fix that? Or do I just need to move the time? And start to learn how you work and when you work best. Recording podcasts is only going to happen as soon as I drop the kids off and I get back home and the house is quiet. That's the best time for me to record. Editing it, I can do other times. Edit yourself for a little bit so you know what to expect, and then plan on handing that off to someone if you can. Other truth before we wrap this up. Just because you start a podcast and you show up regularly and you just do it does not mean that you're going to have this huge influx of clients. It does not mean that you're going to start running ads on your podcast. This is all a growth process. The number one way that you're going to get eyes onto yours, I already mentioned earlier, is that by doing interviews and having them share it to their audiences, you're going to get more views. As you continue to do this more and more, I am going to recommend, and this is not me, I am going to recommend that you, and I can recommend someone to you that I'm planning on using here soon. There are people that will come in and optimize your YouTube channel so that YouTube starts paying you. That is a possibility. If you want to learn more about optimizing your social media, where social media will pay you and all of that, I recommend you tune into the 7-day social media challenge that is starting on Monday. If you need the link to that, just put link in the chat and I'll get that to you. Or an L or a link. So, people sharing it, the collaboration, adding value. People that follow you and see the value are more likely to buy from you. The more people that you talk to and you're like, they don't want to be a paying client right now for whatever the reason might be. Hey, have you checked out my podcast? These are free, useful content that you can provide to people to help warm them up. That does not mean that you don't have to go get in the DMs. That does not mean that all the rest of business is going to get a lot easier. This is a resource. And if you want to learn more about that, we can talk more. This is not a one-stop. It's going to fix all your problems. What it does do, though, and it's so fun, it helps you find your voice. It helps you get more clarity on what you do, what you offer, how you talk about what you offer. This is why so many coaches will tell you you need to go live every day. It is more than just putting yourself in front of people. It is crafting and refining your message. It is putting yourself out there. The growth, the internal growth process that happens will have a ripple effect. That you will gain all of this confidence. And as you gain confidence and you show up with confidence, that is what is going to have sales converting. So yes, there is magic in making your YouTube channel, in making your podcast. But the magic is a holistic approach. It is going to help you in getting better at relationships. It is going to help you at getting better to talk about what you do. It is going to help you in interviewing skills, in connecting with people, in honing and crafting your message. Okay. So, setting time on your schedule first to look at your YouTube channel, the entire channel. And just because you do videos on your YouTube channel, some of them you're going to be more video oriented and where people need to see it. That's not your podcast. So all of your videos do not need to be a podcast. A podcast is kind of like its own little show of its own. It is mainly listened to. And then the visual component is just there to help you make additional connection. Plan on interviewing 3 people, and then you can rework things and polish them up. Then you can put a request out to say, hey, I need guest speakers on my podcast about XYZ. Do another 3 to 5 people that sound really great, that have audiences that they can share it to. You don't have to go get newbies if you want to utilize their audiences. Do a pre-chat with them. And if you want to step before that, you can have a Google form that asks them about them and everything and what they would like to talk about. Then you can go through that Google form, choose 5 people to do pre-chats with, see if those are really going to work, schedule them, do them. You can do them live. You can record them and then upload it. You can utilize StreamYard to do that live. And I would recommend that whenever you do that, you can upload it to YouTube and then share that YouTube link out, or you could do it live and gain the visibility from that path as well. Thanks for watching today. If you have any additional questions, let me know. I hope to see you for the 7-day social media challenge next week as well. And I will see you later. Go be productive. Go be in flow. Go be in abundance. And you can also tune into my podcast over on my YouTube channel at Izzy Nally. It's Magnified Abundance, or you can check out Decoding Wisdom.